that we have. And when you take a mold apart, it's full of little drops of resin and goop and everything. And the first thing, and whether you like to do it or not, beside the point, because you really do have to do it. And I just dropped my knife on the floor. I always have some kind of a blade that I go around. And this is an ordinary Stanley blade. And you can see what I'm doing, just knocking these little pieces of resin off. Now, cleaning the mold is a real important part of getting nice, really accurate parts. We have a reamer that we run down through the holes after every cycle, because no matter how you do this, some resin is going to drip on it. And I like to get all these extra. If you don't do this after every cycle, what happens, you don't get a wax buildup. And then it just turns into stalactites and stalagmites, and God, it just makes such a mess, it's unbelievable. Now what I'm going to actually show is a complete layup of one tank, and then an assembly. But this is, and I'll just do one part to show just about how much effort goes into this. It's labor intensive. You cannot skip this step. You cannot just go out and make another part without cleaning the mold. This is part of what we have to do every cycle. It's generally about a 5 or 10 minute job, but I'll take one of these little pads. Now I never go down into the machine part, because that part already has many coats of wax on it. And what happens with a mold, when it's new, they call it a green mold. And after it gets used, after that part gets pulled on a molecular level, it gets smoother and smoother and smoother and easier to release the part. In other words, a new mold is the hardest part you'll ever release is the first part. And from that part on, the mold gets smoother and smoother just from the use it endures. But anyway, this is again why it's labor intensive. Now normally about every 5 cycles I'll go through and clean the ends of this up, just for my own use, because I've paid so much money for this tooling, I don't want to see it deteriorate. And I expect to use this, I hope, until the time I retire from the business or sell the business to somebody else when it's my time to go. But anyway, cleaning these parts up and maintaining them, labor intensive. No different on this part here, but I don't want to go up onto the part that I'm going to be using. You see right there, and a lot of times you can get it off with your fingernail, a lot of times you can't. You can see how some of the stuff is in the holes. I just gently hand run a reamer down there. That's the exact size, because these are very, very tight fits. They have to be hammered together and they have to be unhammered to get them apart. A lot of times when you're cleaning up a mold like this, just having your fingernail will actually help release it, and it doesn't scratch the mold. See, up in here I don't like to scratch it. Again, it's not an instant thing, it takes time. And no matter what mold, even if you have, like on our wing mold, fuselage molds, the molds always have to be prepped. People that aren't familiar with molding operations, the molds always require a little bit of preparation between each cycle. And then they need to be prepped so that the epoxy doesn't stick. Part of the prep is always, if you see on the pins always are subjected to having some resin. And this resin is a very, very tenacious resin. And once we start laying up the parts, it does get kind of sloppy. You really can't, you have rubber gloves on and you have other things, aprons or whatnot, and it's difficult. All the cleaning has to be done before you start the part. And that's a tight fit. I can pick the part right up by that. Cleaning the pins, another thing that's real important, because we want a press fit, and I don't want them to lock up and stick. When they lock up and stick, or the part sticks, it's called a catastrophic lockup, and that means you're not getting the part out, or you'll not have the part and you'll destroy the mold. It is true, and I go back over and over again with all the planes I build and fly. I always try to get the CG further back, further forward, further back, because there's always a spot where it suits me. There's other spots where it's going to suit other flyers, a better skill level, less skill level. but there's always a spot that's right for you. And if you have all these tuning tools, what you find out is you can set it easily. When you don't have the tuning tools, now see, that's still got a little bit of resin on it, or there's a little bit, I got to run the reamer down through there. Having the tuning tools is so important. Now at this point, I drive the pins in on one side just till they bottom out. And now both of these parts are ready for their waxing operation. But first I want to prepare the main body at the same time so I can do all the waxing in one cycle. This is the bottom half, or the top half as the case may be. There's two that match. There's a third part that's an interference part, and you can pretty much see we have a mandrel that's highly polished. It's 9 inches long. It has one end that we use this to bead on, because you'll see when we go to disassemble this, and Wayne has really engineered this up well. I think Wayne's a professional mold maker, but I'm not sure. If he isn't, he should be. Anyway, that kind of fits in there with a fit. That's the wall thickness of our tank. Then we have another piece that slides in from the side. And when we actually assemble this, we will wrap on the end of it a piece of carbon fiber tow so that we can then beat the mandrel out. I just wanted to demonstrate this because when we start beating, this really gets, this will come out, and when we take this piece out, we'll have our tank body, we'll have our tank shell in one piece. That wrapped end that you can see when that comes out of the mandrel. This part is typically in here, like so. And what happens we drive out the center mandrel, then take the clamps off, take this piece out, and this is our remaining piece. And you can see what the quality of finish on the inside. Of course, this all gets trimmed away. We have 2 laminates of 1/2 ounce cloth, 2 laminates of carbon, and it's relatively nice and smooth in there. Again, I think Wayne did just an unbelievably good job of engineering this up. This is way out of the realm of me engineering it up. This would never have happened without Wayne. Wayne had loaned me in the past prop molds that I've made props from. Helped me in almost every way you can help somebody. And really, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most helpful people that I've ever met in the world of model aviation. Always enjoy having a little talk with him on the phone or exchanging technology. And by the way, his website is NIVIRT spelled backwards, and you can see how he makes his own motors from scratch, just to give you an idea of his skill level. Anyway, the skill level isn't worth anything if somebody's not going to share it with you, though. And my next thing is I'd like to share it with the people that just like to see how this part ultimately gets made. In the same way, I would love to see how they make a motor from scratch. And I'm certainly never going to be able to tool up to do it, but I'd love to see how they do it. And you can see here how we've squeezed out all the extra resin. There's virtually no resin that doesn't have to be there. So I won't bother doing on video because it's just redundant. I like to clean. If any of this looks like it's getting in rough shape, usually this part doesn't have any extra on it. This piece typically needs, here's a little shaving of stuff that can come off here. And then once I get this cleaned up, it's pretty much the same as doing the other stuff. I try to clean the big stuff up with a blade or my fingernail. And you can see the stuff coming off right now. You can see a skin coming off. Out here it's not really important. It's just for my own. I just like to have the part clean. Again, I would like to have, and it's something that I've been able to do with the carbon fiber gear mold, is just get an infinite life out of the mold by constantly maintaining it. If you're only going to make 1 or 2 parts, this part you can gloss over. Anyway, we're ready for the waxing operation. Now there's several ways to release parts. PVA, silicone spray, but the best one, and Wayne is the one that turned me on to this, it's available from George Spar Aerospace Composites. He's in all the newsletters in his ads. And it's not the ordinary part-all wax. In fact, even the bird likes part-all wax. By the way, if you don't know, this is Peeps. He's my shop helper. He helps me prep molds. Get out of here. High temperature.